we discussed. Yes, Satyankar.
The roles of a manager, ma'am.
Okay.
Like what's the like what's like the definition of management, and overall what's the management and what is manager's role in that organization.
Okay. Did we talk about skills? Thank you, Samrit, even. Did we talk through technical skills, human skills, and conceptual skills, or Hinsberg's
Ma'am,
interpersonal?
we discussed about being effective and efficient.
Okay, we are way too back in the pace that we would have covered. Okay, this is section D. Mhm. All right, we'll go back to the session. I was always, for all of the sessions, we are at a different pace, so it took me a little while to grapple with. But thank you. We'll pick this up quickly. Mm, PowerPoint can't be opened. We'll be talking in subsequent succession. What are the managerial functions? What are the managerial roles? And what are the skills being required? Oh, yeah, very much around efficiency and effectiveness of management. I'm sharing the content. Just let me know if the slides are visible to you. We need to make up for one of the classes which was lost in the very beginning, introductory one. Are the slides visible?
Yes,
No.
ma'am.
All right, thank you. That's a super swift answer. So we were talking about efficiency and effectiveness is the last thing that I picked up. Right. This is where it is. Management is basically a process to get things done with people, and that's where it's most important to ensure that you reach your goals. That's all right, but at the same time, people need to see through that this is useful, right? That's where the effectiveness comes into. These are the four management functions. I'm absolutely clueless if this is what we discussed or we just ended with efficiency and effectiveness. If somebody could help me sort this out.
Ma'am, we went around manager's job, ahead of manager's job.
Okay, so roles of managers, because this is managerial roles,
Yes,
jobs of
ma'am.
managers. Till here it's manager's job, controlling. All right, no worries, I'll pick this up from here. Thank you so much. Talking about the roles of the manager, like you know who's a manager. Since day one, we talked that somebody who supervises somebody's work is manager. Rest everybody in an organization is a non-managerial position. Now, owing to a position, you are expected to behave in a certain way. That way of behavior, that way of conduct is what we call as a role that comes owing to a particular position that you have in the organization. For example, you are vice president, right? For example, you are chartered financial analyst, right? For example, if you are sales manager, owing to the position that you have as a sales manager, there is a role that you need to discharge, that you need to manage your sales territory, you need to manage your sales team, you need to look into how much the targets are being attained, how much are being short of, what are the possible reasons why people aren't doing their targets, right? All that comes to you because of that particular position that you hold in the organization, right? For example, you look at, if you look into the university setup as an organization, this is something like as a faculty, right? So I have a role to discharge, like to come and talk to you, discuss the syllabus, complete it on time, handle your queries, conduct exams, share assessments, and so on and so forth. Right, same way for the HOD to manage the entire department, same way for the dean, vice president, president of the university, and the chancellor. That comes, somebody is expected to behave in a certain way. You are a student, I'm a teacher, right? There is a decorum of a class, there is a supposed way of behaving. So that comes from a particular position, right? And that is what we call as role. Mintzberg, he studied, Mintzberg again comes from a management propounders. He studied five of the executive managers and see one of the things that you would do in management is simply observe people. A lot of researchers, we call them as ethnography. It's not simply you ask people for a survey and a quick questionnaire. At times, it goes back to studying the people's behavior, careful observation. So that's exactly what Winsberg did and came out with what are the roles that the managers play. Sounds something very akin to Shakespeare, that the world is a stage and we are all the players onto it, right? Something very similar is what Winsberg said. What are the different roles? Let's quickly navigate into. According to Winsberg, he said that the manager's role fits into three categories. We can bucket it into interpersonal roles, informational roles, decisional roles, depending upon what is the major thrust area or the ambit within which a manager is operating. In interpersonal, that's a very wide, right? You can call it a behavioral as well, right? You can call it as human as well. So interpersonal is basically a role that you discharge in terms of being a figurehead, being a leader or a listening officer that is in touch with, in contact with, representing symbolic head of the organization. Then a lot of you as a manager has access to a lot of information. Like I get a filtered information at one of the levels of filtering is my HOD. My HOD gets a lot many emails. Only those which are concerned to me are being bounced back to me, right? That is what, as a manager, she does the informational role, only relevant information being passed on to me. So a manager has an access to a lot of information, right? So to monitor that information, to disseminate that information to the concerned person, or to be the spokesperson representing your organization, representing your department in the various meetings and saying that I have so and so faculty and so are a PhD, so are teaching so many undergraduate courses, PG courses and so forth. Then there is a third category which is called as decisional. In the preceding slides, we did talk through that no matter whatever it is, every manager invariably makes decisions, right? So the decisional role can further be bifurcated into being an entrepreneur. It's not only that you set up your own company and being called as entrepreneur, you can very much be on the job and still entrepreneurial. A lot of advertisement nowadays that we look through, or either they mention it in the advertisement, entrepreneurial spirit needed, or otherwise they make it sure through interviews that they select the people with entrepreneurial bent of mind. So that is where entrepreneurial ability is also to be one of the things that one of the roles that a manager is supposed to discharge. So is the case of disturbance handler. What happens if something wrong happens? There is somebody who has, who ties up everything, who holds everything together. If you would remember the Taj and the terrorist attack, Anupam Kher, which is a documentary remake of Taj terrorist attack, Anupam Kher exhibits this role very beautifully as a leader. He asked all the fellow his service members that you all are free to leave in case you are concerned about your families. No offenses here, but I'm here to serve, and the people who are here to serve can stay with me. So that's where you handle the disturbance. In case of a crisis situation, how do you navigate through? Resource allocator and the negotiator. These are very well written on the slides. Let's quickly navigate through. Interpersonal roles in terms of figurehead, which is symbolic representation. So you have various forums, right? Various, for example, Confederation of Indian Industries, for example, Academy of Management, or you have Pan IIT conference or the Pan IIM conference. So you represent it somewhere. Depends upon the kind of business that you are in, and accordingly you're representing. So that's called as a figurehead, just like who represents a family. For a patriarchal Indian system, the classically it goes back to a grandfather or the father, whosoever is the head of the family. And a leadership role, of course, as a leader, right? You are supposed, like, whatever be the role that you are in as a manager, you are still accountable and answerable for the team results, your respective team. If you are handling a team of IT engineers, if you are handling a team of sales supervisors, or if you are handling a team of marketing persons, right? And the licensing one, every business you see, it doesn't operate in silos, it's very much connected. So at times you need to interact with government, at times you need to go interact with various other regulatory authorities for licensing, for registration, for clearance, for tax paying, for permissions, grants, licenses, so on and so forth. So that is where even the licensing role is also being played. It's not only within the organization, but even the outside the organization. So these are the interpersonal roles that a manager typically discharges. The next is in terms of information. In terms of information, in the sense of holding that information, monitoring the inflow of information, disseminating, reaching out to the concerned people, being informed timely, and the spokesperson. For example, every year that we have convocation or we have student orientation for the new batch, right, we hold a press meet. In that press meet, we do tell that what is the breakup of the students, what is the class strength, what is the likely trend of admission, how many more admissions, what is the new thing that has happened, how many students have a work experience, right? And the same way for the placement. This is the statistics of the graduating batch. This is where the students are placed in higher education, overseas, abroad, or prestigious institutions in India, or this much is the placement scenario. This is these many companies have turned up for placement and the relevant ones. So you are speaking on behalf. You are dispersing that information on behalf of the company. So a manager, of course, does that. And the last one as terms of decisional. This is in terms of being entrepreneurial. Even in the organization, there is a concept called intrapreneurship. Companies like Apple have a very structured, systematic approach to nurture that entrepreneurial ability of people working on roles in the company, right? So that's where even the companies which are very much, very much into existence, they also somehow try to cope up with the what is new things happening. It only comes with few creative heads in the organization. So employee suggestion schemes, for example, works very fine here. So that is entrepreneurial ability that is needed. You can have a varying views of it. We are all people, right? Somebody might be too good at one aspect and comparatively less good at another. That's all right, but this is where a majorly a manager need to focus upon. Disturbance handler, in case of course correction, in case of some problems, in case of some anticipated change, when your plan A fails, what happens to plan B? That is another thing being talked through. Resource allocator, of course, organizational resources are limited. That's what we said, that you need to be efficient as well as effective because the resources are limited. So have a optimum utilization, and who would get to work on what kind of projects, who would handle admissions, who would handle training and placement. So the various sections are being accordingly decided as a resource allocator. Negotiator, there are various terms and conditions that needs to be negotiated, right? For example, for daily working hours, right? For example, when there is a course allocation, I might very well say that my credit load doesn't fit into this course. I'm already done with it, and henceforth I can refuse. In case my manager doesn't have anybody else to take up this course and still insistent that I take up this course because my expertise fit in, very well, there is a negotiation that goes between me as an employee, she as my supervisor, to decide on the courses that I would like to take. So a manager very well plays a role of negotiator as well. This can be within the organization, this can be outside the organization as well. It depends upon the context that we are talking through. So these are the three major categories of the roles that managers play, right? In terms of skills that managers require, these are three categories again. Conceptual is what you call as cause and effect. I'm sure you would have heard of fishbone diagram. What is leading to what? Causation and effectuation is what we call normally in management. So that is where what is causing this effect, right? For example, if you organize this training because you saw the performance going down for the people and you thought a good training session might help you revive this. Well, even after the training, when you look into the productivity output, it's still going down, did not improve. So that is where you see the cause and the effect, that you went through a training and still I did not see an impact on your productivity or improvement. So what is causing that dip? Maybe the problem was so that it cannot be rectified with training. Maybe it was more of a motivational issue. Maybe it was more of a money matters, that somebody is being paid less, somebody is being treated unfairly. There is something else that cannot be rectified with the training. So that gives you an idea what is working and what is not. So that is what you call as conceptual skills. Another way to look at conceptual skills in management is the way that we do case studies. I'm sure if you would have heard of anything about IIMS or not, but case studies is one thing I'm sure you would have heard of. This is how management education is being communicated in case of, this is what happens in IIM classrooms. All the cases, right? Nobody discusses the concepts. It's the students, they study themselves and they only come and discuss cases. So that is where, because that's an application aspect of it. You already know the basics, and henceforth you go and solve a particular problem. A case is nothing but the every time that we have an example, that's because of paucity of time being twisted into a two-liner, else make that run into 20 pages and you have a case study there, right? So what is causing a particular problem? Maybe it's the sales going down, maybe people are not motivated, maybe the company products are not just doing fine, maybe the customers are not happy. Problem could be anything. You are supposed to find out what is the solution given the context of the case. So that is conceptual skills. Then you have human skills, ability to understand human behavior. This is where I spent good deal of 45 minutes in the very first session orienting you as engineers, why engineers and why this course. Right, that's important because that's fundamentally, because no matter you are a computer engineer, you are a system analyst, you are anything working with Cisco, Intel, all the big blue chip companies, whatnot. You are a human being, right? The way that you conduct yourself has a lot larger implication for the organization that you would choose to work for. Even amongst in your own group, even amongst your own family, you can very well see the way that you impact your, the way that you conduct yourself, the way that you behave yourself has an impact. Let it be in your own class group, in your own small group of friends, or the family, and the same gets replicated in the organization. Right? But organization, our parents, of course, cannot disown us. That's a privilege that we overly exploit. But then organization can very well hire and fire people. So that's where it has an important implication. Technical skills, again, or the technical job specific know-how. For example, you know there are certain circuits, you know there are certain chips, you know what is a technical qualification that is needed to have a robust app, right? How much bandwidth required, how much gigabyte can be saved, how much terabyte, and so on and so forth. Whatever being the technical nitty-gritties of doing your job. For example, if you ask me from the HR point of view, what are the certain theories which can be used for motivating people, or what are some of the concepts of leadership, or for example, I'm into say production operations, so I know production operation scheduling, I know the mixed quality principles. So that's technical know-how. Or if I'm into a finance sector, I'm somebody who knows tally. I know somebody how to read the profit and loss statement. I know how to read a balance sheet. That's a job specific technical know-how. That's called as technical knowledge. So for being a manager, these three skill sets are being important: conceptual, human, and technical. I have a question for you here. Which one do you think is most important if you see the levels of management as the top management, middle management, lower management? Which skill set do you think is most important at what level and why? People quickly have to switch to another session as well. Please unmute yourself and go ahead. Not even a single person in the entire class? What's wrong, mighty engineers? Oh wow, that's a staggering number, 15 people in the class.
Ma'am, could you repeat the question once?
Yeah, Saurav, certainly. My question is, we have just talked through, there are three skill sets that a manager requires to be effective, right? My question is, as you move through levels of management, which skill set is most important at what level? Like for example, if you say conceptual skills important for the lower management, or the human skills important at the senior management level, and why? Makes it clearer, Saurav?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I I think conceptual is important for a fresher because he needs to understand the work, how the work is being done, what work is being done. Later progresses as he gets promoted, probably for a managerial position, then he might have to work out between relations between his employees, his subordinates. Then the human skill is
Mhm.
needed.
Okay. Thanks, Sara, for answering. We'll shortly revisit and see through. Anybody else willing to answer? I wish at times I'm envious for not being a student.
Ma'am, I feel like human skills are important at all levels. Like one should possess them. And ma'am, for like a person who has just joined a company and has started working, ma'am, conceptual skills would be most important because you're starting a new position and you must have your base concepts clear at that time. And as you get slowly promoted, you need to gain technical skills as well. And ma'am, as I said earlier, human skills should carry all the way along.
Okay, good to see. Absolutely a delight to see, Ankur, that there is somebody else apart from me, not coming from an HR domain, and still a people's advocate. Too good. Let's quickly see through what the content talks about. Well, when you talk through the technical ones, look at this gradient. You're able to see this gradient? Yes? No?
Yes, ma'am.
See.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you are at a lower levels of management, you're just beginning your career. The best that you are asked in interviews, revisit. The best questions that you are asked in your interviews for your summer internships, for your projects, viva, for your very first jobs, would always be related to your concepts, would always be related to your technical know-how. For example, I might be asking you, in case you have read through organization and management, we call in journal OMT. In that case, organization and management theory. So in that OMT, I would ask you like, what is entrepreneurship? What is manager? What is a manager's role? These goes to a specific job. How, right? Somebody who has studied through HR should know this basically. Somebody who has studied management should know these concepts basically. As you move higher up the ladder and you are amongst the top echelons in the organizations, you are the top managers, you are the vice president of the company, you are the CEO of the company, you are at the strategic business unit head level. At that high level, you would have best of the engineers being hired for your company to see through the technical aspects of the product, whatever it be the detail. You'll have best of the management graduates being hired from IIMs and whatnot, top tier B schools, to read through the profit and loss statements, to read through the balance sheet, to advise you on the best course of action. But it's you who need to see through the cause and effect. That today, if I take a decision, what is an implication out of it? Because that's a long range that you need to see through. So that's cause and effect is more pronounced when you reach higher up in the ladder. Wherein one of your friends, Ankur, very beautifully answered, yes, this is quite a lot of common sense. Human skills, invariably, it's most important throughout. That's how you see the gradient. It's neither concentrated at the top or the bottom, it's continual throughout. Right? Because irrespective, you are a junior one. For example, look at somebody like Indra Nooyi. She must have been exceptionally amazing as an intern. Right? Not everybody pass out from IIM Calcutta makes it to the CEO of company. They of course do. And I remember one of the episodes when I was there at IIM Calcutta. For the very like in the day, it was all right. People would be in their Bermuda shorts, slippers, and whatnot. That's all right. But by the time it's late evening towards like close of a particular semester, they would all be trimmed up in their well ironed suits, and everybody with the umbrella. I understand if you are from Shimla or you are from any other hill states, it's a weather change just at the drop of hat, or even in the Sikkim. It rains at any moment, but Calcutta is unlikely that. So I kept wondering why everybody has an umbrella. And some fine day where I got to know that is basically the placement season that comes on, and for any pre-placement talk, they are supposed to be in their formal attires, and henceforth everybody. And since and Calcutta has all the roads being side lane with the huge massive trees, actually the big bulkier ones, Since it's late evening, 6 o'clock onwards, that they have their PPTs, pre-placement talk, they have all the birds chirping out there. So they ensure that there is no shit that happens, and henceforth all the umbrellas. So that goes back to the human skills, that not everybody from IMC would make it to CEO. Definitely they'll be handsomely paid and would well be taken care of. But it certainly makes a difference, not only from IMC, but from any other institution. We have all seen people coming from most modest and the humble backgrounds and making it still big, at least to the extent that the people give their examples as definition of success. You may choose to differ, that's personally all right, but that's, I have a reference that I'm making to. So saying that, irrespective of your position, irrespective of your hierarchy in the organization, your behavior, human aspect is continuously the most important thing. And that's where we see most of the people coming from certain rarest of rare backgrounds and still making it big, right? So this is how the manager, the managerial skills are being needed at the various skill sets. So we are done with this session. We talked about what is management, what is organization, who are managers, what are the roles that managers play, and what are the skills that are needed for the managers at different levels. Good to go. In case while I'm switching the content, in case you have something to ask, please feel free. What is the next thing that you think is coming up? What do you think I'll open the next slide for?
Expectations from a manager.
Okay. Keep working, engineers. Okay, expectations from the managers. All right. Okay, since I'm asking question, I'll ask one more question. Like, by any chance, can anybody guess what engineers are called as at IIMs? What engineers are called as at IIMs? Yes, no? Why are the slides not visible? No? At least say no idea.
No idea, man.
Okay. All right, no worries. It's called as GEMS. Any guesses for the why GEMS?
Ma'am, I think G is general, E is engineering, M is male. I don't know about S.
Okay, Sagarika, that's absolutely brilliant. You amazingly nailed it because it's an absolutely skewed ratio. Even for the engineering, certain branches, I hope you would agree, the girls are rarest of rare, right? And that's how the James is. Absolutely, I owe a coffee to you, Sagarika.
Yeah, ma'am.
Do make it a point anytime that you are on campus that I committed this to you.
Okay, ma'am. Sure.
All right, pleasure is all mine. Thank you. This is where we are. Managerial expectation was very succinctly going in a progression. Managers, managerial roles, managerial skills, and expectations. I leave it on to you to keep guessing. This is the very first function of management that we are going to talk through, planning. Right, the first and the fundamental and the foremost of the management function. We'll talk each four of them slightly in a detailed version. That's where looking into the meaning, this is first and the foremost function. Yes, we remember that it goes through like planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So the first one. This is something in advance, like 3 years back, you wanted to be engineers. And even way back, after your 10th standard, you decided that you would be engineers somewhere, and henceforth opted for mathematics. Somebody might have been confused, like me, would have opted for biology for mathematics, biology with mathematics in grade 12. Me and all my three siblings, we have all had biology with mathematics. So that's like I can make a career out of engineering where I'm absolutely disastrous and I'm happy I didn't choose to. I'm pretty happy going into management. So that is where it is something being decided in advance. Futuristic in orientation is what we call through planning. This is future oriented, and this helps you because you have a direction. Now you see that, okay, these 4 years of your life are being dedicated to being computer science engineers. That gives you a sense of commitment, that gives you a goal and a direction. And henceforth, everything that you do revolves around your degree for the computer science engineering. So that is where it helps you, planning helps you work systematically because you have a goal, right? You have a purpose, you have a destination to reach through. So that is where the planning comes into picture. Going further, one of the definition that comes from Kunz and Allen. Kunz and Allen are the management propounders, and in undergraduate we do have one of the very popular books coming from the same authors called as Principles of Management. And this has been one of the leading consultants to the American Fortune 500 companies. So let's look what is this planning according to them. It is thinking of all the interrogative question: who is supposed to do what, at what time would you do it, who is to do it, right? How to do it, what is the process that you are talking about, and what is the purpose that you are trying to attain with this. So of course, as we have already precedingly talked through, there is a point A to point B that you want to move to, where A is your current location and wherein B is your destination. It can be any dream position, vision, goal, mission of the organization. So something that the path that you tread from A to B is what you call as the plan, is what you call as the bridging that course of action. How would you reach your destination? And that's what planning is. So planning is deciding in advance what to do, how to do, when to do, and who to do. All your interrogative questions put together, if you answer them succinctly, what you have at the end outcome is the plan, right? And that's fundamentally, there is an entire 3-credit course based out this single subtopic of management, which is planning, which we call as strategic management. We'll subsequently in the slides we'll talk through how it makes a difference, because planning is being foundational, being fundamental. This is wherein all other functions of yours would be based: leading, organizing, and controlling. If you do it well, well begin is half done. And if not, you can very well imagine what happened to Maggie. It was a massive company, it came back to life, that's all right. But for a small new player, it must just have been being quoted in the management classes as a disastrous case. That's exactly where I don't remember if I talked about McDonald's at any point in time. The series of mistakes that it committed. Did I? Yes? No? McDonald's?
No, ma'am.
All right. At least I'm sure if you would not remember the entire content, at least you'll remember few of the stories around the businesses, around the common brands that we have been interacting with day in and day out. I'm a keen observant and I'll try to fit that into my classes as and when possible. So there is a beautiful case study that talks about McDonald's and how its planning went wrong. One of the classical cases of the worst ever strategies in the world. And that's where McD, we all know this is into a fast food segment, but it was under too much of pressure from the regulatory authorities to come up with the healthy variants, right? And that is because their fat content and the cholesterol levels were too much of high and too much of health risk. Henceforth, under those pressure, they launched one of the products which is into the salads. Now the salad is a healthier version, that's all right. But then for quite some time, they didn't pick up in sales. So people were wondering, strategists at the McDonald's, they were working and wondering, why aren't the sales picking up? So what do? You go and talk to the customer. Why don't you like the product? Why don't you order this? What is the problem that you anticipate, so that we work upon the resolution? They asked people and came from a research survey. The results said that when I step into McD, it's not that I'll look into what is healthy and what is not. Had I been looking at the healthier option, I would have chosen something else, not the McD. McD, I step in when I'm hungry and I really want something to quickly grab, which is enjoyable and which is yet fulfilling. I don't give it a thought if it is healthy or not. Taking this as a starting point, and then they started, and then people also said that it's very bland in taste. It's tasteless, wherein their signature products were much more tasty. And that's where they started adding sausages and few other components to make it tasty. Well, they kept on adding so much of those sausages and the chicken pieces and whatnot that their end product of those salads were much more unhealthier compared to their signature products, the iconic, the fries and the burgers. And that's where it committed the entire cycle. Why did they start launch of salad as a product? Because they were under pressure from the regulatory authorities. At the same time, they launched a product, completed the complete circle of committing mistakes, and still they were with the product which was way much more unhealthier. That's a huge amount of effort, time, energy, money that's being resources that's being wasted on a product that finally did not take off. And they had to finally write this off. And the CEO made this statement that realizing that for a fast food chain like McD, healthier options like salads would never be a mainstream revenue. You can generate side business once in a blue moon. That's okay. But the mainstream revenue would always be the burgers and fries. So it's good to stick with your USP and don't experiment a lot. Right? So that's where the planning could go wrong. And that's where one of the cases that what might happen. But it's a massive giant company. Well, one product failed. It's being talked in the management classes as a failure of planning. But then there is a lot in terms of learning and moving on that the McD did. Subsequently, we'll keep talking about many other products where the planning failed. At the same time, to appreciate the brighter sides, we'll also talk about some of the examples where the planning really worked through and it made the company that it is. Right? So that is where the planning is. Let's look into a couple more of definition. In terms, these all are, for example, Urvik, Henry Fayol will keep referring to Henry Fayol as one of the most influential management propounders, and the Louis Allen. These are again the people from the management field who said that planning is a mental predisposition. So I have it in my mind how to do certain things, right? And I do it based on the fact. I have studied the market scenario and henceforth I see this coming through, right? And henceforth I propose that from an analog camera, I should move on to the digital because I've seen that people doing, right? So that is what Urvik said. It's a mental predisposition. All that I have is in the mind. According to Henry Fayol, this is to decide among the best course alternatives, among the set of alternatives. So, of course, there is no one best way to do a particular thing, especially when you talk about management. And that's where even the case studies are beautifully famous for, that you can have multiple answers. That's where exactly, when you have multiple courses of action, what is the best one to decide? However, the best is still subjective in nature because it is subject to various factors that you consider are important, looking into the business domain that you are in, looking into the business environment that you are in, right? That is according to the Henry Fayol. Of course, why? For attaining organizational goals, that goes without saying. And according to Louis Allen, what it is forecasting, if you pick up a word, because anyways, you are talking across the future. For like somebody would have imagined at the time of Kindle, now we see that as a reality. But before that it was officially launched, it was somebody who would have imagined, how about reading a book on a farm? And then you had very much the Kindle, right? So somebody lived through those fantasies. So that is which is forecasting, something that you see through. So you are anyways making certain assumptions. As long as your assumptions hold true, your theories are all okay. The moment your assumptions fall, so does your theories. Right, so we end this here today with the definitions of planning. We'll have a subsequent discussion going further what planning is, some of the examples, and how do you arrive at a robust plan for your business. Is that clear? Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions, observations, thoughts? No?